So here's the scenario you find yourself in as an AI engineer. You've developed a chatbot for a website, but one of your customers complains that they asked the chatbot how to speak to a customer representative, and it gave them a nonsensical answer, and they're no longer interested in using your chatbot. Not what you want to hear from a customer. How do you address this issue? You need to know whether this is an isolated or a reoccurring issue, and if it is reoccurring, what's causing it, and how do you fix it? You'll need to find examples of conversations where the issue occurred, but you have a log of thousands of conversations. How are you possibly going to isolate the ones that have this particular problem? Going through it by hand is completely impractical, and a Jupyter notebook is not designed for viewing a dataset of this size. But in Hyperparam, I can simply ask for a true-false column that indicates whether this conversation involved the customer asking to speak to a human representative. Once we narrow it down to those, then we'll determine how often the LLM may be giving nonsensical responses when asked this question. So this conversation is labeled false because the customer did not ask to speak to a representative, and then this one is true because the customer did. And you can see in this case, the LLM responded with the phone number just like it's supposed to. The agent is intended, when asked how to speak to a human, to call the Get Customer Service Info tool, which will give it the appropriate phone number, and then provide that phone number to the user. So let's see how often it did that correctly and how often it did not respond appropriately. Now I'm adding a new column that, for the conversations where the customer asked to speak to a representative, will label them correct or incorrect, based on whether the agent gave the correct answer or a nonsensical one. As expected, the conversation I showed you earlier is labeled correct because there was no issue there, but here's one that was labeled incorrect. And here we see that the agent told the customer that somebody would be contacting them when there was no actual plan in place for that to happen. So this is a hallucination. This is an issue with the chatbot that needs to be addressed. Now I'm going to export so that these columns will be fully materialized for all rows. So now that it's exported, we can query the full table. So I want to know how often the customer is asking to speak to a representative, and when they do, how often the agent is giving a nonsensical answer. So this has revealed a critical issue with the chatbot. About 1 in 5 times the customer asks to speak to a representative, the agent gives a nonsensical or incorrect response. We need to fix this. I want to know if there's an issue with the tool calls. Perhaps the agent is not calling the Get Customer Service Info tool when it should be. So let's see what tools were called in each conversation and if there's a correlation between which tool was called and the probability of an incorrect response. And this reveals the problem. The model is almost always giving a correct response when it calls Get Customer Service Info, but usually giving an incorrect response when it calls Get Customer Info, because that's the incorrect tool. It's not supposed to be calling that tool. That tool doesn't give it the appropriate information for how a customer can contact a representative, and as a result, it's hallucinating these nonsensical responses. So the root cause of this problem is the model confusing different tools and calling the wrong one. So the solution is almost certainly going to be clearer prompting to tell the model what each tool does and when to use it. With Hyperparam, we were able to take a large data set and hone in on a specific issue and figure out the cause. This would have been nearly impossible by just manually looking through the data, and very cumbersome in a Jupyter notebook. But in Hyperparam, it's straightforward and efficient regardless of the size of your data set.